The Racing Pod
on Off the Ball
with William Hill. Who you got? 18 plus. See gamblingcare.ie.
And you are welcome to episode 83 of the Racing Pod on Off the Ball with Duggan and Johnny Ward. Remember, we're here every week with analysis, race previews, tips, stories, interviews, bit of crack as well. The first half of the pod each week is free to air. The second part is exclusively for members. So be sure to sign up by going to offtheball.com/join. And this week for members, we're going to look at the supporting races at Sandown on Saturday, also Haydock, and we'll get Johnny's chargy bet. So subscribe now. How are you, Johnny?
I'm very well, JD. I've been. I was at Bellewstown on Thursday there again this evening, and having a nice time there. So yeah, it's been some great racing.
Have you found yourself stuck in the phone box yet?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a tourist when it comes to these racetracks and the little kind of.
I've never been to Bellewstown. I've got to sort that out.
Yeah, it's actually, I was just looking at it from my house. It's under 40 kilometres away. Yesterday, if you were to go even on the road, and you see the little slither of County Meath's coastline if you go up to the stand, and it's really, really rural. Like, there's a bar kind of across the road, but it's one of those racetracks that you wonder how these racetracks, even like Goran, like, they're really, really rural. And I love that about those racetracks. There's really nothing else around the area in terms of being built up. I did notice yesterday, Bellewstown is on the hill of Crockafutta, as it's called. And I always thought that was a weird name. And it was only the first time I noticed yesterday. Gavin Lynch organises this charity cycle in aid of research into pancreatic cancer every year. And one of the stops on the way is Bellewstown, and it's a big climb, like it's up on a hill. And the actual Irish for it is on Knockfada, which is like basically the long hill. And whoever the genius was that had to turn that into English, on Knockfada became Crockafutta, which it just, it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like Baile Átha, right, in Athy, is like the town of the Fort of E, a chieftain who died there in the 2nd century on the crossing. And they turned it into a Thai. Like, so when you're trying to be loyal to the place names of Ireland and what they mean, Knockfada it makes perfect sense. It's a long climb, and then when you get to Bellewstown, you're up on a height. It drains very well, and there was good racing there on Thursday night and good racing today as well.
I'm from a place called Ballybrack in Dublin, which is on Ballybrack, which means the speckled town.
Yes,
they should have just called it the speckled town.
Yeah. It's like Lisbrack is the speckled Ringfort, which is Edgeworthstown, is one of the place in Longford, not Edgeworthstown, but a lot of the place names are just mad stuff. But Knockfada, I was like, that. Yeah,
I wonder
just an obvious one.
What's Listowel in Irish?
Listowel, which is the Ringfort, Tuhel's Ringfort. List is very, very common. Like, I think it's like a ringfort. It would have been dotted around Ireland. You'll see like Raw would be there a lot. Awe would be a ford. Awe Clea is the hurdled ford, which would have been the crossing. Baile Loon was a kind of an innkeeper, and if you wanted to cross the Shannon, can you imagine a ford before bridges were built trying to cross the Shannon? But all Loon was the if you wanted to stay the night, you'd stay at Loon's little ford there before you'd cross the mighty Shannon. And that became Athlone.
Did you have a lot of time on your hands when you were younger?
I love Irish place names. I just love Irish. I did actually. I got into weird things like national anthems and Irish place names. But
flags?
Not as much flags. My mate Julian would be big into flags. I got a bizarre fascination with national anthems when I was a teenager. I just thought they were an interesting insight into a country, and I still kind of know a lot of them. But place names, I'm actually... John Creedon did some lovely stuff in it on RT. It's you can go... There can be so much history and meaning in a place name that brings you right back to what it meant at the time.
And are there any silly anglicised Irish racecourse names then that have been just ruined by anglicisation?
Leopardstown means nothing. Ballion-Lubber, which means it's nothing to do with lepers at all, or leopards. I can't exactly remember why, but I'm sure there are many. I'm sure there are many, many more. But all this awful Irish language we had to become civilised and speak English in whatever was the 17th century. But those people who kept the language alive, and that guy John Creedon spoke about, I forget his name, but he recorded all the place names, what they meant. He did a massive service for Ireland. But I'm going back to the Long Hill anyway later on.
Very good, well done. A bit more of a serious story. Kerry jockey Oisin Murphy, 4-time winner of the Flat Championship of the UK, has been banned from driving for 20 months and fined £70,000 for driving under the influence of alcohol. So the 29-year-old pleaded guilty to driving well over the limit at Reading Magistrates Court on Thursday of this week. He was just under twice the legal limit. A female passenger was also injured in the single car collision he was involved in. The British Horse Racing Authorities say that new conditions will be placed on his licence, but for now he's free to continue riding. And he released a statement, Oisin Murphy, on Thursday to sincerely apologise for his actions. I quote, "I know that drink driving is unacceptable and there's no excuse for what I did. I have let a lot of people down. I particularly want to apologise to my passenger and her family." He added that he'd be fully cooperative with the inquiries of the BHA and will not be commenting further until that process is concluded. Now, this is not the first time that Oisin Murphy has been in trouble. He was previously banned from race riding for 14 months by the BHA following COVID and alcohol breaches. And it's a very serious development, Johnny. Look, I'm not into the sphere of punishing people in life. I would have a huge amount of empathy for anybody with any issues. I would just say that most people would as well. But when you're getting behind the wheel of a car well over the limit, that is crossing a line, obviously, which is acknowledged. He's had a lot of chances at this rate. It's a damaging episode. You would hope that he will find the help to get a lasting solution here.
Yeah, I suppose the other misdemeanours, that is just to provide a bit of context for Oisin Murphy, who is a nephew of the great Jim Cullity, and they bear a resemblance. Actually, I don't really remember Oisin riding in Ireland, so he's obviously been in England a long time, and he is an outstanding rider, and top class on his game. But if you look at the misdemeanours, in November 2020, he was suspended for 3 months after he tested positive for metabolites of cocaine. And he had, the suspension was half the 6 months served by other jockeys who had tested positive for the drug, because he stated it had been due to environmental contamination after a sexual encounter with a girl who had been taking the substance. And in October 2021, Newmarket stewards stopped him from riding after he tested above the legal limit when he arrived at the racecourse. It had emerged that he had been involved in a fracas in a pub the night before when he punched a bloodstock agent in the face with a plastic cup. February 2022, he was banned for 14 months by the BHA for breaches of coronavirus protocols, as you referenced, and for twice testing over the limit for alcohol on race days. He was found to have lied to the BHA about his whereabouts, having travelled back from a COVID red list country and not isolated before the day before race riding. And one should recall as well, in August 2024, he failed to arrive at Kempton that Monday when he was required to provide a breath sample, and he then stated subsequently that he had hemorrhoids. So we have a list of Oisin Murphy misdemeanours here. But this was way beyond. And I get what you're saying, JD. I lean from the left to the right and the left to the right in terms of punishment, but I generally am very much on the left in terms of empathy and looking at the root causes of somebody committing a misdemeanour like this. Because Oisin Murphy has a root cause here that is very serious. This isn't a one-off. Anyone who gets into a car with a passenger like that, if you get into a car well over the limit as he was, and then didn't obviously provide a test, you are absolutely putting others at risk, and your judgment is impaired because of the drug that is alcohol. Absolutely. But to have that woman in the car, obviously, this was an appalling infringement of decency of what he did.
Yeah, as he says, it's unacceptable and there's no excuse. So he has held his hands up in that regard. And look, I think the future is what is important now for Oisin Murphy and getting the help that he does need. And hopefully this will be the end of, as you said, the misdemeanours.
It's been a strange thing in top level Irish flat jockeys. Like, it has been a strange
Not just
team.
Irish.
Not just Irish, but like when you think Richard Hughes, Johnny Murtagh, Kieran Fallon. Richard Hughes sober for 20 odd years, Johnny Murtagh sober for I don't know how long.
Yeah.
Kieran Fallon confronted.
But I would differentiate. I mean, there's an amazing video about racing welfare, about Johnny Murtagh telling the story about alcohol, and Richard Hughes told a story. I think you got to distinguish between people telling their stories about alcohol and then a legal offence that's been brought before the courts when you talk about somebody being over the limit.
Oh, 100%.
And so I think we need to differentiate people who've been in the pressures of sport and had their issues, which we all the empathy for. And I think there's been a lot of empathy for Oisin in the industry. But this is a different matter when you're getting behind the wheel of a car with somebody else in the car and you're over the limit.
100%.
So I would differentiate between, but I get your general point, which is about being a pressurised industry, a lot of wasting, a lot of pressure.
I think it was culture as well, JD, and I like to think, and this is a trend in Ireland now where alcohol consumption is on the decline. I'd like to think, I spoke to Jockey about this yesterday, who's what would he be in his 30s, and he said like the culture, even when from he started to now, has changed a lot, and it's not so much that culture anymore. And they've such a hectic schedule, these jockeys, but they're elite level riders now as well. And I as you say, there's you have to differentiate there, but I'd like to think that's kind of going out of the game as well.
Like Frankie Dettori, Kieran Fallon have admitted taking cocaine when they were riding. So look, yeah, I think we just need to draw a line under what we said here, and hopefully we'll not have to mention Oisin in that regard again. We just hopefully mention his talent in the saddle, as you said. The Irish Derby last week, he called it right. Lambourn won. It was pretty much as you probably would have said it was going to happen beforehand. He got racing quite a way out. Epsom and Irish Derby doubles. I don't know what's next for this horse, but Lazy Griff will want to keep an eye out for over a further distance in the future, folks. But Lambourn, I suppose, got the job done. Unfashionable and workmanlike, but got the job done.
Yeah, and it's funny for a race that was almost a repeat of Epsom. Like it just didn't get me going, and I think it was because I don't really feel this is much of a bunch of middle distance horses, and some of those well fancied horses in the Derby didn't perform at all. And I mean, Lambourn didn't enhance his reputation here by effectively confirming the form. He beat a handicapper all out in second, so it was more, I suppose, his toughness. And it was a weekend when, with the prevailing wind, it paid to be on the pace. But he was racing a long way out, I think, and he had to show his toughness. I mean, looking at Lambourn in terms of his long-term future, he may, if he doesn't go down the Ledger route, they're probably looking at him as a stallion that could go for the flat. But for me, he may end up being a national hunt stallion, 10 grand sire or something like that, or even cheaper if he's national hunt. But he's developed into a very good horse, and I felt there was an awful lot of chat about the Curragh, the structure of the weekend card and all of that.
I went on social media and I said, look, Aidan O'Brien was, rowing back on the naysayers and people being negative about the Derby and the race and the festival, and I just said, it's not being negative to ask the question why 20,000 people less than 20 years ago were going to the Curragh on Derby Day. 31,000, 2005, 11,000 last week. And it's important to ask the questions and try to find the solution. And we talked about this in the show last week, but if you're not asking the questions, if you're not trying to help to find the solution, it's still going to be 11,000 for the next few years.
Yeah, and people who laud, the attendance at Croke Park last week, or the League of Ireland attendances or rugby attendance, like racing attendances include everyone, basically. Like there's jockeys, the trainers, and loads of complimentaries. So these figures are very small. Like even 11,000 at the Curragh on Derby Day, the amount of those who actually paid in, you'd be surprised how low it is. And I mean, I'm being hypocritical here because I've often asked for complimentaries off racetracks. People ask me for tickets. Can I do something? And maybe I owe him or her a favour. I just try to help, and you annoy the person at the racetrack. But complimentaries are obviously.
But in a more general sense,
so it's about
the buzz is not there. The buzz of 20, 30,000.
No, but in fairness, JD, neither of us was at the Derby. I was at Croke Park on Sunday, but there was a lot of favourable reports about the buzz.
Okay.
Now the crowd that you talk about, that was, it was Budweiser used to be a big sponsor, and it was a big day out, and you could go into the Enfield and all of that. I certainly think they need to improve on 11 or 12,000 for the Derby. But
you're saying it's not all bad then?
No, it's not all bad. And sorry, like Irish people as well, they're just not that bothered about going racing to watch. I think they're not that bothered about going racing to see horses full stop. I think Irish racing, in terms of attendances, are the diehards. It's like mass. People who just keep going and keep going and keep. People who buy newspapers. The decline is with the rate of the mortality of the older people. And that you go to Thurles on a Thursday, it's older people going racing. The other people who go racing are not racing fans per se. They're people who want a day out. There'll be more people at Laytown, as we were last year, than would have paid into the Guineas. Like, that's to watch run-of-the-mill horses on the beach. So it's a spectacle, and the Curragh can't change that. But I do feel, JD, and I've had a go at Leopardstown on this, I do feel some racetracks aren't making anywhere near enough effort to get people to go racing. Like nowhere. If you're selling a product, if you're running a racetrack, one of the actual, one of your challenges should be to get people to go racing. It's as simple as that.
Okay, 3:35 Sunday on Saturday. The Carl Eclipse, a Group 1, 6 runners, good ground, good race. This, looking through the field, Ombudsman, Sozi, Camille Pissarro, Delacroix, Hot as Hell, and Ruling Court. I like this race.
Oh, it's a cracker. I have to say, I think in terms of the flats, I'm going, like, I am it's funny, I'm turning so much to the flat over National Hunt. I just think it's way more interesting as time goes on. Maybe that's a sign of National Hunt decline, but I love mile and 2 races on the flat because it brings the milers against the middle distance horses, and it's such a kind of a specialist in between trip. And I love the Champion Stakes for that reason. And you have this as well, the Eclipse, where we've a hot favourite in Ombudsman. I tipped him up at Royal Ascot, but he was friendless in the betting, and I definitely feel he was flattered at Royal Ascot because Luxembourg didn't perform. There was a pace collapse, and those in behind kind of came with a withering late run. He looked very good on the day. I'm just not sure about, would I back him at this price? I don't feel the race is going to be run like that at all here. It's going to be much more tactical.
Would you forgive Delacroix?
Yeah, I would.
Because Ryan Moore stays loyal. He doesn't ride Camille Pissarro.
Yeah, and that's a fair point as well. Camille Pissarro, he's a proper proven 10 furlong performer, and the fact that he rides Delacroix is a positive for his chance. There's not a lot between them betting, but Delacroix was sent off 2-1 favourite in the Derby. At the same time, he was very, very good. Even if you look at his win at Leopardstown in the early season trial when he beat Lambourne, that's worked out well. For me, the thing with Delacroix here is dropping back in trip, and the fact that I think he'll be able to get out in front and possibly sort of half dictate a muddling pace or be up with the pace. I don't think this race is going to work out quite as easy for the favourite, so maybe there'll be more questions to ask of him. But like Ruling Court, I was very, very disappointed in him at Royal Ascot. Having said that, it might have been a case that he was trained to run in the Derby. Probably rightly they pulled him out of the Derby, and maybe trying to train a horse to win a Derby after being a Guineas winner and then dropping him back to a Guineas trip like a few days later just was too much. He raced very lethargically for me and has questions to answer, but he's still an intriguing runner.
Is he your each way selection?
I'm going to go with Delacroix at the prices.
Yeah, so am I. Both 11-2. So
11-2 is the top price with Hills, and I'm happy enough with that. I mean, you can't be confident.
But it each way bet to nothing in a race at what?
I'm not sure, Judy. We've only 6 runners. I wouldn't be guaranteed he'll finish in the first 11-8 to place is not a 11-8 to place is not necessarily a good bet. It wouldn't be a good bet. But Ombudsman for me, I feel that Royal Ascot was definitely a bit flattering.
And then we have the Pats Mullen Stakes in honour of the late great man. Nace on Saturday, 4:17 a mile, 8 runners. This is a race for 2-year-olds. Daytona was a 500 grand colt. Aidan O'Brien trains, will come on for a 7 furlong win at Gorn. Should he win?
Yeah, the Gorn race was a bit odd because I remember even watching a race on TV and they were commenting afterwards, God, there wasn't a bean for this horse. He went off 3s in the ring, whatever he went off on the exchanges, and he just won easily under Jack Cleary, who's flying it for Ballydoyle. His prices have just come in, and fair play to Hills for putting the price up because you're getting each way terms here in the race. It's not the easiest to price. They've actually gone 13-8 joint favourite with North Coast, which is interesting because there are some...
It's Joseph's horse.
There are some intriguing runners in this, including Green Soul, a couple of newcomers, Blue Moon by Space Blues, who's a first season sire, and Wyman by Australia, who's in some sort of vogue at the minute. I'd go with Daytona. I don't know what to make of that Gorn form. It hasn't really been properly tested yet, and I don't know if it were that hot, but he should improve, and he was very good on the day.
Okay, this is the Race and Pot on Off the Ball. If you're listening to the free version of the podcast, we're leaving you here. But if you're looking for more, including our look at the supporting races at Sandown on Saturday and also Haydock and Johnny's charity bet because he won last week, go to offtheball.com/join to subscribe and get the full podcast with all of our racing tips, stories and insights from the week's action.